like teaching points really on and helping people out. So a lot of people that
Yeah.
I take on are kind of like at the beginning stage of their journey. I think that's developing into my niche, as it were,
Yeah.
and like small compound efforts. So I just kind of wanted to get from an expert like yourself, just some key takeaways of, you know, what people are like with the gym. Ego gets in the way, with lifts, and I know we've spoken personally on sort of fixing muscles and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of the time you're so eager to get back to stuff that you neglect actually recovering properly first. And then like you've done, and you use Bob, don't you? Your skeleton friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Legend.
Where
Bob.
it's actually about like strength through movements as well, right? Strength in the muscle rather than just like, I don't know, you hurt your shoulder, so you're just gonna move it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, I guess any gems like that you can give. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but
No,
yeah.
you're not taking up my time. I just want to make sure that I'm giving you everything that you're looking for. So are you just looking for a little bit of info that you can give to your potential clients that might be able to help them on their journey? Is that
Effectively, yeah. So the guys that are on board with me, I know some of them, again, like I'm all about like small compound investments over time. So like a lot of these people are starting quite slow.
Okay.
So it's just like about daily steps. I will offer them like workout plans and stuff at a certain point. And then when we get to that point, I can then lead them into this video, for example, just to say like how to go about like, and especially this time of year, I know we haven't got gyms available, but even for, I guess, people that are slightly more further down the road of, it's like straight back after Christmas and people think that they need to be lifting the same that they were before and ended up doing themselves an injury and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I think what you can, one message which you can really get across is that it's so important that we have to continue to manage our load. So that's the key. You have to be able to keep load. And obviously the issue now is obviously the gyms are closed. So people, like exactly what you said, you've got people who are doing X who are now not able to manage that. And what will happen is it's going to go two ways. They're going to drop off. So they're not going to do enough and they become deconditioned. And then they start getting back pain and backache and they're wondering why. And they're kind of going, well, it's because I'm sitting around all day and I'm not moving, which is right. Yes, you've got to keep moving, but you've got to keep loading the structures. Or part B is that they're used to lifting. They're doing all the lifting now. Everything's closed. And then suddenly they decide they want to become runner, let's say, for example. So, and everyone's trying to do, the old Instagram 5K, whatever, they start running out. And the numbers picked out of a hat. So it's like, I've never run before, but I'm going to decide to go for a 5K or a 10K run because it's a nice number. And I know that loads of people do that. And there's where you're going to get your injury. So an injury happens when you've got a spike in your acute load. So something which you're not used to. So if you decide to go for a massive run, but you can't tolerate that. So your body's not used to that. Your risk of getting injured is way, way higher. So everything, exactly what you're talking about, your baby steps, your mini steps, that's gold. So everything has to be done in a small way. So if people are like, you could encourage people, listen, all you have to do is move X per day, but also try and get some sort of strength stimulus into you. And that's going to be the hard part. But you can stretch all day long all you want. It's not going to change really anything. It's what it does is it like stretching has been hyped so much. So what it does is it'll help increase your stretch tolerance to a muscle. So if something feels tight, I can put a stretch onto it, then neurally my body will feel like it's able to do more. So it opens up a small window for me to be able to move and load more. But the end goal is always putting some loaded stimulus into it. So load can help increase bone density. So you're thinking, if you've got clients who are a little bit older, that's why we train, because we're making the bones less dense. So I think if you cut a bone and you look into it, it looks like a honeycomb. So there's loads of holes in it. That's if people who have low bone density. So you're thinking of your osteoporosis and your elderly clients. So people who actually train, you can increase that bone density so it becomes a thicker bone. So if we fall, our chances of breaking a bone and getting injured are lower. Now, if we're thinking more about our type of population and the younger population, we still need to load joints, muscles, ligaments, tendons, because it desensitizes everything, it strengthens everything, it lubricates the joints. So it actually helps make everything nice and strong and healthy. So a lot of the time, the main thing is, especially with lockdown, is people are getting pain because they're sitting around all day.
Yeah.
The reality is you're putting yourself in one posture or one position that you can't tolerate for a long part of time, and that's the issue. So sitting like with a hunch isn't the issue. The issue is that you're not used to sitting like that for X time. So you need to get moving and get loading and get back to strengthening those areas. So when it comes to posture, your best posture is your next posture. You got to keep moving. Oh, sure. Write that down. Put it on a t-shirt.
I love that. I guess unless we're in a place like your backdrop, it's very difficult to then get said load. I mean, I've seen loads of stuff online. I have put it in my programming of like how to load it, rucksack full of stuff. I guess is time and attention the same type of same.
It's same principles. Yeah. I mean, our goal is we need to get that strength adaptation. So we need to get to a point where we're starting to fail like with lower reps. So doing like loads of body weight push-ups and loads of body weight squats can only get us to one certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, spot on. You know, if you can't invest in weights, they're so expensive now. You got your rucksacks, your sandbags are cheaper. You can go to shops and get sandbags, which are a great shout. They're heavy and they're cheap. So sandbag is a big one. Other than that, exactly what you said, time and attention. So everything has to be done slowly. So you're better off actually just going into a squat or a lunge and counting 5 seconds on the way down and 2 seconds on the way up and doing 10 reps of that, rather than doing 30 reps of squats, then going straight into 20 burpees, straight into 20 press ups. If your goal is you want to maintain strength and that you're worried that you're losing strength, because you're having to think about your goal. If you're used to training like that, so if you're doing all these kind of fitness games and you want to keep that high capacity type training, then that still needs to be in your programming.
But I guess it's not going to fall off, is it? Muscle just doesn't fall off. It takes a fair while for it to come down the other side. Like,
yeah, I mean, if we stopped training completely, so if we decided I'm not going to lift anything, you're going to get muscle atrophy over the next few weeks. It's going to take 3-4 weeks, so you will see muscle atrophy happen and you will decondition. And also you're just thinking about your proprioception and your priming and everything. So your nervous system will become weaker. So while your muscle will shrink, you can become weaker. So that's why it's important that we keep that strength stimulus. So I think what is missed in a lockdown scenario is trying to keep the strength side of things high. And that's the harder part, but that's when we just have, your programming is going to look slower and heavier. And we just have to find ways to get that out of people. Which kind of makes sense, because especially then you want them to be accustomed to lifting time and attention or some sort of higher load, because chances are when you come back to the gym, they'll expect to be able to do pretty much around the same from a load point of view or from a volume point of view as well. And then what will happen is you're going to actually get a niggle. You're going to start feeling sore only because the load has exceeded the tolerance. The capacity has exceeded what your body is able to tolerate at that particular time. Mm-hmm. So you've got to build it in and progressively overload, make it a little bit harder weekly. It might take 3 or 4 weeks when the gyms open up again before you get back to, near where you were. But that's part of the game. We're all in that position. So
exactly, yeah. I think that you took my next question out of my mouth there. Like with that, it's sort of how to, what's the best approach? There, I guess. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Right.
It is, and that's it. So like, you see all these like big cycles, macro meso cycles. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It just has to be like, if you can imagine a graph, right? It starts here. I've done X volume. That can be load or run, okay, distance. And then the next week I do a little bit more. The next week a little bit more. The next week a little bit more. Then, okay, my body's starting to get a little bit sore and I get a little bit used to it. So then I take a little bit of a break. Okay, so I deload it. I do a little bit less. And then week number 5, I start again, maybe where I was at week 3. So then by week 6, I'm where I am with week 4, and then it keeps going up. Problem is that if you just keep doing the same thing, this is where you're at. You're here the whole time and nothing changes. So if the weights you're lifting or the volume doesn't change, then your body doesn't adapt, it doesn't change. So there's no gains there. There's no progressive overload. You're not doing that. You're just doing that. Does that make sense? I've just used things graph, but
yeah, for sure. What are you seeing at the moment? I know like you're working with professional footballers and the army and stuff, and your own clients. But what are you seeing as like the standout niggles and injuries with sort of like maybe Gen Pop or?
Yeah, general population mainly is running related injuries. People who have decided to just run because they can't get access to the gym, they're running more. That's the big one. Everyone's bought new kit and is out running.
Yeah.
People who are not able to monitor their load properly, they're going to get, from a worst case scenario, you'll pick up a stress fracture. That's something you want to look out for. The bone, again, is just not able to tolerate it. You're just putting so much load into it that it's not used to, that the bone can fracture. That can happen in the foot. It can happen in the shins. You see that. Or in a more general point, you're just going to see flared up, angry knees, hips, which are sore, ankles, which just flare up again, because they just don't have the strength and the endurance to be able to tolerate constant repeated running or that distance of running. And again, I say that's for the population of people who lift and who don't usually run and then who decide to go out running. And again, you have to pick your battles. You're better off doing a slow progressive run. If that means you're going to run for 1 minute and you're going to walk for 1 minute and you're going to repeat that 8 times, that can be enough for some people. For some people who have the conditioning in them, they might be able to run 1K and then bring it down and then do another 1K. They might be able to do 2K, and that's it. You have to just keep bringing it up. In regards to how much you progress, it's not a rule. It's more like a guideline. The guideline is really anything between 10 and up to 30% of an increase per week. That's what they say. So 10% was this kind of golden rule, but there was some good research coming out that some people who were pretty trained could go up 20 or 30%, and there was no real change in injury. And it's just about finding that sweet spot about how you can manage. Everyone's different, so there's no rule. You can't say, okay, you have to go up 10%, but it's a good guideline. You know, you're saying a trial 10%. So if you ran 1K, next run you're going to do 1.1. So it's not a massive jump, but it's enough, just an extra 100 meters, and it's enough to just keep incrementing.
Sure.
It's a slow game, but you'd rather take your time and build rather than spike. Remember we said if we spike it, then our risk of injury is higher, and then we've lost 6 to 8 weeks of rehab, and then we're coming in deconditioned, and also then we're worried about a re-injury. So then there's that whole side of things too.
Yeah, I like that. It's actually the same philosophy in like weight loss as well, right? With it's literally exactly the same. Like you'd rather it long term and progressive over time rather than, I don't know, 10, not that it would ever happen, but 10 kilos in 1 week. And it's also kind of like a mindset thing, right? Like you feel like, well, that's what I should be doing because that's what I did last time. And I think people end up looping back to, well, I ran 5K last week, why can't I do this now? I'm going to push through. Funnily enough, question, when you were talking about the running, right? I know that there's been this running boom because everybody can, and new year, new me, all that kind of rubbish. I've seen people run, and running, and I think, hang on a minute, you're running or jogging pretty much at the speed that you could walk. Now, from a professional standpoint, right? This is a question to you directly: is it better to walk slightly faster than impact joints by basically running the same speed you could walk?
Do you know what? That really depends on so many factors. So it depends on your training age, you know, how accustomed you are to running or fast walking. Is there a correlation like between like jogging at one pace and walking at a fast pace? I don't actually know what that like specifically. I've never read a journal regarding that.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, in my head, like logically, what's the goal? If the goal is we just want to get moving, want to get our heart rate up, and we want to be able to jog, do it. You know, I don't think we need to get too pedantic about it. As long as you're used to it, it's comfortable for you, and it's tolerable for you, it's fine. It doesn't really matter what speed you go at. You know, you can delve deep into the mechanics, the biomechanics of and posture of running and stuff. But again, it's not. I don't think you need to go too pedantic about that. I think we have to keep things simple, because it's too easy for people to overcomplicate different things. Particularly because we're just talking about the general population who just want to get moving again. You know, so all we need to encourage people to do is go for a run. Okay, if you've got that in your system and you're used to that, and you're a runner, or you do some running, then continue to build that tolerance. If you've never run before, then again, that's something very slowly you just need to build into. So can you actually tolerate running for 20 seconds as a light jog, and then walk for 20 seconds? That's absolutely fine. That's amazing if that's what you want to do. You know, because then you might feel good. It might make you feel like you're moving, you're running, you can tick that box. I feel I ran today, you know, then you'll feel accomplishment when you've done 25 seconds. It doesn't matter, you know what I mean? It depends on the person and what their goal is, really.
Sure. Any advice in priming for a run, mobility wise?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the person. If like, I wouldn't say to someone who's never run before, okay, I need you to get in the gym and do some primers and some single leg bridges and stuff. You know, there's always benefit in doing some sort of like neural activation stimulation to prime the body. So anything to just get the muscles firing. Imagine that the whole body has this massive energy connective system in it, and you just need to, literally the word you use, prime it up. I love that word, rather than warm up. You know, you want to prime. So that's it. If that means that you're going to do some bridges and some squats just to switch everything on, you know, some really quick kind of like calf raises, just more on kind of a plyometric side, just to prime up the calves. Great. That's fine. And then just build into your run slowly. Make sure that your hips, you know, you've just in your range of motion, your hips, so everything's just, again, from a neural point of view, the tolerance, it doesn't just all feel stiff when you're out moving. And just don't break into a sprint if that's not what you're used to, because sprinting is high load, you know. So even if you're feeling you get a blast of second wind, you know, if you haven't sprinted in a while, I definitely wouldn't recommend breaking into a high speed sprint unless you're looking for an injury. So
I did that myself the other day. One of my friends, he seems to be able to mentally block out everything, right, for a 5K run, and he's got it sub 20. And I really want to do a sub 20 5K. Went out and I basically sprinted for the first K, did something to my hip, and it was not ideal. And I literally just ran straight out. Boom, I'm going for this.
Did you?
I'm gonna, It wasn't ideal. And again, even my dad, he was saying to me that he started walking now, okay, which is amazing in itself, as what you're saying.
Yeah.
But he's ended up giving himself sort of like shin splints, because he walked the first couple of times he walked, he just went out and he just walked so fast. Obviously, when your foot's like that and then it lands on the floor, right? And then you,
but this is it. But again, it's about the volume he's put in. It just exceeded what he's able to tolerate. You know, that's it. You know, and he's gone out and he's asked his body to do something which it's just not prepared to do. And, you know, he would have been better to just slow that down, or to just break it up. This is what happens. You know, it's easy for me to say that. Listen, we've all done it. And it's hard to find that sweet spot. But as long as you're aware of it, or you're telling your clients, look, you need to just be really specific. You need to know, what are you trying to achieve, and just be really specific about it, and just take everything in bite sizes. Then you're going to win, you know, from an injury reduction, to reduce the risk point of view, and to achieve your goals, because at the end of the day, they're going to feel more motivated once they can tick a box. You know, like it's not being able to complete a session which will put people off, and then they won't keep going. Whereas if they can have that thing to tick, I've got clients, sometimes I use True Coach, and they just say the reason I come back is just that feeling to tick the box, because it's just that sense of accomplishment, you know. So they get their high off that, because then they can finish, they can close their iPad and they can go, that's it, session's done, it's ticked. And then I got the accountability. I can open up, see all those ticks, so they know I'm watching as well. So
I use the same True Coach, just to help. It's difficult as well, though, isn't it? Because doing extremely specific, I mean, I guess if money was an object, you could specify. I don't even know the right. I can't even say the word. There's no point in me trying.
Specify.
Specify. That will work.
Yeah.
To absolutely everybody to the money, whereas you kind of get like a general setting, and then you adapt it to each individual, like you say, based on their goals, right? I guess maybe sort of another question then to you, like mobility wise. I know you were saying about like if you want more stretching or more flexibility, mobility can serve its purpose, right? But it's not then necessarily going to help you to lift better, or is that actually more beneficial to that as well?
Well,
Do they work hand in hand?
It comes down to self. Yeah. So imagine you've got someone who's stiff, they feel tight, okay? And this is the big discussion at the moment. So just because you feel tight doesn't mean that your muscles are short. Okay, what can happen is that you can just feel restricted because your body feels that it's protecting areas, and neurally you feel tight. So this is why dynamic stretching works, because you dynamically, you put the muscle through the movement which you want it to do. So for example, if my hips and hamstrings and back felt really tight, but I was about to squat, the best priming exercise before you start squatting is to squat, because you're priming your body to go through that movement. So you're better off if I feel, the classic is the tight hamstrings. So it's my hamstrings feel tight, my hamstrings are short, so I'm going to stand and I'm going to do a big static stretch. Now, in that 30-second period that you're stretching, you're not going to do much to change the muscle length. So the viscoelastic property of the muscle, the actual architecture of the muscle is not going to change in that 30 seconds. What is going to change is the neural element, the tolerance. So it's not going to feel as tight the next time you do it. So actually, you're better off doing like as kind of a strength stretching type exercise. So for example, like an RDL. So if you're thinking of a Romanian deadlift, you know that pull you feel in your hamstrings and you feel like your hamstrings are working, you're technically stretching your hamstrings. So you're like, so you might as well, if your goal is, I want to increase the flexibility of my hamstrings, load through range, so put it in a position where you're loading through. So yeah, the mobility is great as a primer. So it's a great switch on, you're warming everything up, you're getting the hips moving, but then you're loading through that range. That's what you want to do. So everything is down to load at the end of the day, because the muscle has to work through that level of load. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And so that, that's where I would go, and that's for like the healthy, non-injured. There's so many levels to it. But if you're coming in and you're like, I just want to get going, I feel stiff, prime up and just start loading through. I would get I personally would rather give someone, let's say an athlete 30 years old who's stiff, I would give them RDLs rather than static stretching any day.
Right. Yeah. So that's really interesting, actually. Because I think a lot of people, potentially clients as well, and myself, I think you feel like there are things that need to be like you were saying about True Coach, right? The tick boxes. You feel like there are things that need to be done before workouts, right? So like, I don't know, 5 minutes of cardio, that's a warm up, and then 5 minutes of mobility, and then you feel like, because you've ticked these two boxes of kind of like, generally that's what everybody feels like they should be doing, and then you just go straight in and then wonder why your hips feel tight when you squat, for example, or something like that. I think it's
exactly. So programming wise, you can, instead of having that big stretch to beginning, you can do think about what exercise I want to do. So I'm gonna have this person doing a squat and a lunge, like a loaded lunge, Bulgarian split squat and a squat. So his primer, you could do primers. So it's going to be squat. It could be like a squat with a thoracic rotation, or holding onto your feet and extending the knees. Then you're going to go into your squat pattern. Then you're going to go your lunge. So it's going to be that, on your knee, hip flexor stretch, priming the hip flexor, you can add rotation to that, and then you're going to lunge. So you can literally just add that in. So you're literally warming up or priming while you work out. Do you know what I mean? So instead of just block, warm up, block, set, block, set. So it could work like that. Now, the hard part as well is buying people in, because sometimes, you can't change the world. I can't go to someone, stretching's crap. And I don't think that. Stretching has benefits to people, because sometimes people stretch because it makes them feel good. Like people will go, well, I stretch and I feel really good after it. And, you know, I like to stretch or I like to foam roll. And you can't really take that away from people. If they feel that they will lift or perform or live better because they do it, then, you know, it's pointless kind of going, yeah, but this research says this and this. Then you got to go, fine, that's cool. Continue to use your pressure therapy, continue to foam roll because it'll desensitize the area. But remember, now you're opening that window to load. You're filling in that blank for them. So they can crack on as much as they want, but you have to get them to start getting that loaded stimulus in. Because again, that's always going to be the key.
Yeah, nice. I really like your word about prime, to be fair. Just like prime for movement rather than like this ambiguous sort of, like you say, stretch or mobility type thing that doesn't really serve any purpose.
It's a good buy-in.
Yeah,
because people buy into it because, you know, you go, oh, warm up, and then they'll go on a treadmill, or they'll do a couple of static stretches, and they go, right, I'm warm, but you're not warm. You're not, and
you're warm.
And by warm, but I feel warm, I'm sweating, but no, but you're not primed. You have to be primed for the movement. So you're literally, you're telling your cerebellum is telling the body, this is the movement I'm going to do. You have to literally repeat. So what you're doing is you're priming the body to get used to that movement. So then neurally it's able to complete that movement as efficiently as possible. So your primer has to look very similar to what your programming, your exercise that you're about to do is. Does that make sense?
Honestly, it does. It's actually quite fascinating. Even the workout that I've just come from, I don't think I did any priming. I warmed up. Yeah. I got warm. I was warm. Stood in a cold gym, and I did some movement, but it didn't.
But try it, and your lifts will go up because neurally you're going to have it's more on. It's like a TV with white noise. So you're putting it up. It's going. It's getting louder. Yeah, so you're turning that up, you're priming it up, you're switching everything on from a neural point of view. So again, you went back to, well, what about running? This is why athletes do things like A-skips and you know, this kind of like running type drills, wall drills. These are drills that they do because it looks like running. They're priming themselves to start running. And then they go into their more explosive drills. So everything is explosive, and then they're going to go and play. So they do all their explosive jumps, anything plyometric as a primer. They'll do that as a warm-up. And then they go and they perform because they're neurally turning everything on. So then when they can go out, you know, rugby players are hitting hard, football players are striking hard, you know, and that's how it works. That's the idea.
Lush. Bro,
the goal is bringing, the hard part now is bringing that into the general population, because if you go in and you're like, this is what we got to do, you're going to act like American football, it doesn't work that way. So you got to buy them in. So everyone's different. But if you can buy people in, you just got to find ways, you'll win.
Love it. What a bombshell.